So this calculator here looks completely fine inside the browser, but inside the code, it is actually a disaster. So I'm starting a new series here where we take a look at bad code and we try to like fix bugs and bad behavior and that kind of thing together. So if you want to solve it with me, I will have all the code inside a pinned comment underneath the video. So as you can see, we do have a couple of different files inside my editor here. We do have a index.html, we have a style.css, and we have a script.js. So basically, this is the first time I'm actually looking at the code. Like I did paste it inside the editor, but I haven't actually glanced over the code. So that is something that we're gonna do live, so to speak, together. And there is gonna be like around 4, maybe 3 errors with this code here. Again, I haven't seen the code, but I just kind of like prompted my chat GPT to create some error code that I could fix on video. So basically, I think the first step here is to take a look at what we actually have inside the browser, because we do have a calculator that looks like this. And basically, there is going to be some things that are busted about it. So even though we can go in and say 1 + 1 is equal to 2, which is working, there is going to be some things that this calculator is going to do wrong. And okay, it just deleted the calculator. So clearly when you click clear, it deletes the calculator, which is not supposed to do. If I refresh here, we now get it back again. So we do need to do a hard refresh to kind of like erase the 2 in there. You can do that by clicking Control F5 on the keyboard, then you hard refresh your website inside the browser. So basically, I'm gonna try a couple of different things here to see if like what exactly gets broken. So for example, if I say plus first, we can actually do that. We're not supposed to do that. And I say +1 + 1, it's going to say nan, because it's not going to be working. Again, now we have to do a hard refresh because clicking C is actually going to delete the calculator. We can also do decimal points at the beginning. So if I do decimal point 5 times 2, it should give me 1, which it does. Okay, so point something is the same thing as saying 0 point something, right? That is how it works in real life. So that is working like intended. What if I keep doing stuff? So basically we have calculated something. I press 5, nothing happens. Can I do +5 and then say equal? Okay, so it's just kind of like stopping here. It's not doing anything else. So basically what I want to do now is when I click on the C button, which is clear, then it should clear what I just calculated so I can start over again. Like that's, I guess, kind of like the general idea here, right? So taking a look at the code, let's actually do a hard refresh. Let's see what exactly is going on. Because like I said, this is the first time I'm seeing this code here, besides pasting it in, right? I tried to like do this as I was pasting it in, so not see it. But we do just kind of want to see what is going on here. There could be spelling errors, I don't know. So, we're just going to take it from top to bottom, I think. So we're going to say the HTML file, which is the front page here. It does have a doc type HTML, that's fine. HTML language is equal to English, that's fine. We have a head element. Now, just a small thing for people viewing. I typically see my code like this. But because I'm recording, I'm zoomed in like this, so you guys can see. So like if something is like going outside the screen here, I will have to do like wrapping, so it wraps down to the next line, because scrolling sideways is just kind of like, I don't know, we'll have to see. Maybe I'll scroll sideways. Right now there's nothing that goes outside the screen, because otherwise I would scroll. Maybe in here? No. Okay, so nothing is going outside the screen, that's fine. You can do that by holding down Shift and then the scroll wheel, and it's going to scroll sideways instead of up and down if you don't hold down Shift. Just a small trick for people. So inside the head element, we have a meta char set, UTF-8, that's fine. We have a title, which is Curse Calculator. That is actually what the challenge was called when I pasted in like a curse calculator, because it's not really working. Then we have a link to a style sheet that is called style.css. That's fine. That's what the name is up here. And it is also correctly linked to, because it's just directly inside my root folder here. Then we have a body element, and we do have a div, which is a container called calculator that has an ID as calc. Then we have a input type, which is text, and it's set to ID display, and it is disabled. Now, what disabled basically means is that you cannot go in and actually click inside of it. So if I were to go inside my calculator here, you can see when I click, I can't actually do anything. Like it's an input you can't use, so to speak. And I'm guessing it is just kind of like I'm guessing, I can actually tell that it's just to kind of show the numbers here, right? So we can actually paste in a value inside the input, but not actually type inside the actual thing. So instead, we can just kind of like use the buttons down here. Let's do a hard refresh and go back inside the editor. So inside the class, or inside the div, we also have another div, which is called buttons. So we have a bunch of buttons down here, and we have a on-click event, which is called append. So it's calling upon a JavaScript function called append, and it pastes in a parameter. So in this case, 1, 2, 3, plus 4, 5, 6 minus. Basically, it's just creating the layout that we see inside the browser here. So you can see we have 1, 2, 3 plus 4, 5, 6 minus in that order. So it's basically pasting these in as a string, which is like, so it's not like integers, it's an actual string, which I'm looking forward to see how it's going to handle that a little bit later. Because in order to calculate this, we're going to have to use integers or floats or whatever, you know. But then we do also have a value that we actually see inside the button, which is over here. And we just kind of like have all the different buttons we see inside the calculator. And then we have the clear button, which is calling upon clear calculator, another function inside JavaScript. And then we do also have a calculate button down here, which is the equal sign. So I think the best thing to do here, I mean, we're not really going to take a look at the styling here. The styling is not really going to break anything. This is just kind of like to create the calculator. So going inside the script.js, now we get to see what is actually going on inside this calculator here. So we grab 3 different elements inside at the top here. For people who are maybe completely new to JavaScript or just haven't really gotten into it yet, instead of using variable, so for example saying var and then giving it some kind of name, we have something called let now. Now let is actually what a variable is inside JavaScript, but because variable is behaving in a certain way, I believe it hoists certain data inside the code, which we do not want it to do. We had to, or we, me personally, so like the creators of JavaScript had to come up with a new type of variable that fixed this hoisting issue that people did not want it to do, right? But because you can't really go in and just kind of like change how a variable functions, so you can't just change the behavior of something that already exists inside websites, because it's going to break all the websites out there, right? That might be utilizing the hoisting bug or behavior that is happening. So they had to create a new type of variable that actually behaves like a variable is intended to behave. So they had to call it something else, which is let in this case here. So we have a let display, which is equal to document.getElementById. This is basically to grab an element inside the website based on a ID, which in this case here is called display. So we're basically going inside the index here, and we are grabbing the input because that is the one that has an ID as display. Now, I do personally prefer inside JavaScript to not use getElementId. I use query selector instead, and then I go inside and I say I want to grab an ID called display. So you kind of like, just like inside CSS, you can use this hashtag symbol to grab IDs and then a punctuation to grab classes. If I did this, it would do the exact same thing. Like this would do, like the code would still work because this is almost the same thing as doing this. Like there are slight differences in, for example, just like errors not happening on accident or something by doing it this way. which is how we, originally started doing it, because query selector is a newer function than get element by ID. It is, I believe, slightly slower than just doing this, but it's just more convenient in my world. So if you're really like looking at performance, you could like use this particular function here. But then we do also have a let calc, which grabs document.getElementById calc, which in this case here is the entire container with this calculator here. I should have grabbed the last ID too. Why we're grabbing this thing, I'm guessing, is because when we click the C button, it deletes the entire calculator, which it should not do, right? But it's just kind of like leaving it in there for me to like fix that, because it's not supposed to do it. Let used equals equal to false. So this one is a Boolean, I'm guessing, that goes in and checks for if we have already pressed the equal sign. Because remember when we used the calculator at the beginning when I was testing it inside the browser, we could not, after pressing the equal sign, do more calculations. Like it just kind of like you had to clear it to start over then, which is fine. If that's the kind of calculator we're building, then that's fine. But this one's basically checking if that has been pressed. And if it's not pressed, then of course it's going to be false. If we have pressed the equal sign, it's going to be true. So it's going to change the value inside some of these functions down here. So going inside the first function, which is called append. Now this is the one that we saw all these different buttons use. So anytime you press a minus or a number, any of the operators, it's going to use this function here. So inside the function, we paste in a value, and then we say if used equals return. So basically, if this one is true, then return inside this function here, which basically means that we exit the function. Like it doesn't run any code below here. This is a way for us to, so basically whenever you run code inside your scripts, the good habit is to always check for errors first. And then you run the code that's intended to run. So you don't check for successes and then have a bunch of, like errors at the bottom. But you always just kind of exit your functions early if there's any kind of errors. So in this case here, this is actually an if statement. Like this is the same thing as saying if, and then you say this one is equal to true, then return. So if we go in here and say return, like this is the same thing as this line up here. It's just kind of like, what is it called? It's like, like squeezed together. So if there is not an equal sign pressed, we go inside and we say display.value is going to be plus equal value. So we basically go in and grab the display, which is the input that has numbers inside of it. So if I press 2, for example, it's going to go in. It's going to say, well, we haven't pressed the equal sign yet, so it's just going to run this code. So it's going to say the value inside this input is going to be 2 with the first click here, because it's just going to assign it equal to 2. Now, if I go and do another number, like 2, again, so it's 22 inside the input, it is going to just kind of like add that 2 next to the other 2. So it's going to be 2, 2, because it's saying plus equal, right? So we go in and just basically have, a large number. So we don't only allow ourselves to only use one number inside the input. So it just like overwrites, because if you do this, it's just going to overwrite the previous one. So if I write 2 and then 3, it's just going to delete the 2 and write 3 instead. So we want to make sure we say plus equal. So that's basically what that one does, which also means, by the way, that when I go inside the index file, if I write 2 plus, it's going to add this all together as a string. So it's basically going to say, it's going to say 2 plus 2, for example, like as a string. So like this. Like that's what it's basically doing when you write those. And it's creating this like string of a calculation. And I'm kind of looking forward to see how it actually decides to like calculate. Because like I said earlier, you need to like have integers or like floats or something to calculate. So we have another function which is called clear calculate or calculator, which just basically goes in and grabs the calculate or the calc ID, which is up here, or the element called calc, which is the entire calculator, and it removes it, which is a built-in function. It has been a while since I did JavaScript, but it is a built-in function that basically just goes in and deletes the elements. So this one definitely should not do that. We need to fix that. But then we do also have another function down here called calculate. So this is when we press the equal sign. So if used equals is equal to true, then break out of this function. Don't do anything below, right? So basically checking again if we have pressed the equal sign. That's good, that's fine. But then if we have used equals equal to false, then it's going to turn it equal to true, because now we pressed the equal sign, right? So we need to change it. That's fine, this is good. And then we try a block of code. So we basically say we have a new variable called tokens that is equal to display. So the input dot value dot split. So this one is basically grabbing the value of the display. Like that's how it works in JavaScript. You do something, then you change some other thing behind it, and then you change some other, like you could also just like combine this into like multiple lines below. So like basically like this, if I close this off here and go down to the next line, I can then say tokens dot value, and this would be like the same thing. And then I can go down to the next line and I can say tokens dot split, you know, like this is the same thing, but it's just combining everything inside one line, which is a little bit cleaner, I guess. Oh, it actually goes beyond. See, holding down shift scrolling so you can see the rest of it. So basically here, we're splitting up the string, which is the value we right now have. So if you type something inside the input, 2 plus 3, for example, we take apart this particular string and creating an array from it. So it's going to be 2 as the first value inside the array, and then plus, actually no, it's going to be 3. That's going to be the second one, I think. I don't quite remember if it's going to like take apart the operator as well. Like it is saying to split it by the operator. So whether or not it deletes it or not, I just can't quite remember. Then we have something called filter. So we say filter boolean. I think this one basically checks for errors. So if this is actually succeeding, you know, then you know, allow for this to happen. Like this is a try catch block. So if we go down, you can see we have an exception handler here that basically checks for errors. So if an exception happens, it's going to just say error. And I believe this is just basically to check if this has actually successfully been done. Again, we can check this very easily. And I'm actually going to show a tool that I use for programming, which is going to be a little bit controversial because I know some people hate it. But I do have ChatGPT on my side here. Now, let's talk about that for a second, because developers today needs to be up to date with how we do things, right? It is not a secret that all developers, like even people who's been coding for like 30 years, they still look up basic stuff because you just can't contain everything inside your head. And for many years now, we've been using Google in order to like figure out, oh, what is that one function inside JavaScript? Oh, I just can't quite remember it. Let's try and Google it, you know, function in JavaScript that does this particular thing. And then we like have to roam through all the different results to like, you know, find the correct website that might be showing us the answer we're looking for. Now, ChatGPT is essentially just filtering through all those results for you and giving you what you're looking for and delivering it in a way that is easy for you to understand. So ChatGPT is a tool that we cannot avoid. Like you can say you don't like AI, but it's here to stay. Like it is going to be part of the future, right? There might be limits and stuff cast upon it since it's so new still, but it is something that is here to stay. So as a developer, do yourself a favor, create an account because it's free. This is the paid version I'm using here. But it is also completely usable with the free version. It's like, it has like, I believe, a limit to how much you can use it per day. But it's an amazing tool. So basically what I can do is I can say, copy paste this line of code. I can go inside ChatGPT and I can say, what does this code do? Let's say I don't understand fully what this code here does. I can say, what does this code do? And I can say, what does this JavaScript code do? And then I can paste it below here. And then I'll say enter. Whoops, actually I have to submit it. Boop. And it's basically just going to tell me what it does. So this line of JavaScript code performs the following steps. It's going to show me the code. Let's break it down step by step with detailed comments. This is kind of awesome. Display.value. This one assumes there's an input element like an HTML input or a text area with the reference display. And then it basically just grabs the value inside that input and, it just stores it, so to speak. What does the next part do? Splits, and then it has this regular expression inside of it. And what does it do? Well, it basically tries to find any sort of characters like plus, minus, times, divide. And it basically just returns the whole thing as a array. So you can see here, it shows down here, it returns an array where it just basically split this up. So now I can actually see it does actually take the operators, because that's what ChatGPT tells me. So if I'm a little bit in doubt, what is happening here? It is actually showing me that the operators is actually getting inserted inside the array as well, which I was kind of hoping it would, because otherwise you would have to do something else inside the code to grab those individually as well. Then we have a dot filter. What does this one do? Dot filter with a boolean inside removes any empty strings. So it takes null, undefined, or false values from the array and then basically just removes those. So that means that we get a cleaned, like a filtered string array. By the way, essentially. So basically, we just have the data that we're looking for. So if the array, for example, had an empty string inside of it, it basically just removes that. So we only have the data that we want to have. Cool, I did not know that. So now I know. So the final result is basically just going to, if you have this display value down here, it's just going to return it as an array. So it's cleaned up a little bit. Cool. So now we know that using ChatGPT, a lot faster than Googling, by the way. So that is something that I highly recommend people do. Like it's really like you can have a standpoint like on AI, but it's kind of like if Google came out and developers were like, oh, but you need to remember everything inside your head. You shouldn't rely on Google because then you won't remember stuff. I mean, of course you should. Of course, remember stuff. You shouldn't just rely on AI because it does make mistakes. Like, let me tell you, it does make a lot of mistakes. It's up to us, the developer, to properly prompt it to do what we want it to do. In order to properly prompt it, we need to know what we're talking about. So you do need to have the web development knowledge to ask the right questions to get the right answers. Otherwise, I promise you it will be full of errors. Like that's basically how this works. It's just like Google, right? You write the wrong thing because you don't know what to ask about because you're not a developer. You're not going to get the right answers on Google either. So it's basically just a glorified Googling tool, so to speak, with extra features, I guess. So what you can also do, by the way, just to show it, you can also take a screenshot. So if you have a block of code, you can just kind of like do a screenshot on, what do you call it? on Windows, just screenshot your code, paste it inside, and it's just gonna like know everything that's going on inside the screenshot. So it is kind of cool as a debug tool. But like I said, don't rely on it because we are here to learn. We want to get better at programming, right? So you shouldn't just see it as like a cheat tool that just does everything for you, because it's not going to be good code and you're not going to understand what is happening. You need to understand what you're doing, especially if you're developing for clients. It's like crucial that you just like know exactly what is going on inside the code. Oh, the client comes to you, says, oh, I want something different or something changed. Well, then you don't know how to do it because you don't understand the code. You just copy pasted it, right? It's just like going to like online forums and just like copying their code, and you just don't understand anything. So a small talk about AI. It's a good tool. I recommend people using it. I don't think I've Googled anything, like any sort of code, for like the longest time since I got this tool here. It's really good. So getting back into this, let's actually continue. So basically we now have another variable that grabs the result, or is called result, and it goes in and uses a parse float, tokens, and then the first index, or the 0th index inside tokens. So basically what this does here is that it takes a result and it parses the data into a float data type. You can also, if you hover on top of these things, you can also see it inside the editor in most cases. It does say parse float, convert to string to a floating point number. So this was kind of what I was worried about, because we got all of this as a string, but to calculate it, we needed to, we need to actually convert this into something that we can use. In this case, it's converting it into a float, which does mean we can use decimal points inside our calculation, which is good. Below here, we are, well, actually, before we get down there, just notice how it's grabbing the 0th index. It means that if we have 2 plus 2, it's only grabbing the first one, which is 2. All the rest of it is not grabbing. So if I go down here inside the for loop, we can see that we start at index 1, and then we basically say that as long as I is less than the tokens dot length, which means that we basically see how many pieces of data inside this array up here. For example, if we have 2 plus 2, it's going to be equal to 3, because we have 3 pieces of data inside this tokens, right? So this one is taking that number and saying that we want to add 2 to I every single loop. So we're not adding, actually it's not doing that, it's actually saying 2 plus equal. So this is a little bit different. So let's take a look at what it does inside the actual loop here. So we have a variable called OP, and it's equal to tokens I. So this is the operator, I guess, it's grabbing. So in this case, it is saying that tokens I, which is 1, it's basically grabbing not 2, but the next one in line. So 2 plus, it's going to grab the plus there. And then it is going to go down and say we have another variable called num, which is equal to parse float. So again, we're also parsing this into a float. And we are then saying that what we need to parse is tokens I plus 1. So that means that we're basically parsing the second number in line right after, I guess, the operator. So in this case, it is going to, like, if it's 2 plus 3, then we parse the 3 into a float as well, so we can calculate with it. I am a little bit curious about the way it's doing all of this, because why grab the number before we dive into this? Like, that is kind of weird. But let's just continue here. We also have an if condition down here that says if operator is equal to plus, then take the result and say plus equal to num. Okay, so it's taking the first number up here and saying that it needs to be plus equal to the second number here, which is, again, kind of like a different way of doing things. Instead of just like adding them together, like concatenating things, it's just kind of like it's just kind of like doing it based on what the operator is. Then we have an else if that basically goes in and says, is it equal to minus? Well, then minus instead. Is it equal to multiply? Well, then multiply instead, and divide, and so forth. So it is doing things a little bit different than I would personally do it, but it's interesting to see how it does it. And then at the end here, we have display.value. So the input, like the value that gets displayed in there, is going to be equal to the result, which is basically what we get here once we're done. And then, of course, if there's any sort of errors, type error inside the calculator instead. So with that said, let's go ahead and take a look at this from the top to bottom and try to just kind of like fix this one at a time. We do have append value. So if used equals is false, then run this code down here. So immediately, I do not see anything that like kind of like stands out. We just basically take the next value that we click and we type it in there. Now, of course, there is an issue here, because what I can do inside the calculator, if I go back inside of it, is type plus first, and then we have a plus sign. That should not happen. It should only check for integers first, and then an operator, right? Because this looks wrong. This is not how a calculator is supposed to be used. So if I do this, so 12 plus 2, yeah, it's going to give us an error. So that needs to be fixed, because it's not going to work. Because it also, by the way, because of the way it handles things inside the calculate function down here, remember, it's taking the first one and seeing that one as the number, like the first data inside the array, it's going to take that, right? So if I write 12, or like plus 12, the first index or the 0th index is going to be plus, and then the second one is going to be 12, which is going to cause an error with the way that it does things down here. So we need to go in and make sure that it ignores operators if it is the first value that gets passed inside append. And the way we can do that is through a couple of different ways. Like, there's always multiple answers inside programming. Some are like, there's no wrong answer as long as it's working like intended without any sort of bugs. But of course, there's always like a more optimal way of doing things. So basically, I need to check for an operator first. And if it is an operator, it should just kind of like return out of this function here. Basically just say it shouldn't be allowed to run. A simple way to do that is to run an if condition. So we go in here and do a second if condition. But basically, let's do this like the way people know how to do it. Like, if you're not really used to like doing this in one line, let's just do this in a regular way. Regular, like the non-pro way. So basically, we just go in here and we say if value is equal, in this case here, it's going to be a string. Actually, we just do this. It will just kind of like catch more errors in this case here. If something, if the if the user were to go in and mess with the developer tool, right? But then again, they would also be able to mess with this code here. So let's just do a third equal sign. So if it is equal to, let's do a different thing. There's a JavaScript function that goes in and checks for a certain value. What is that? So if a certain value exists inside a string. I forgot, again, this is a good place to to use ChatGPT. So if we go and get a little tool here in JavaScript, how can I check if 4 different characters exists inside a string? And then we can just kind of like see, again, I don't know why it does this. Like when I click enter, it's supposed to just like submit it. So basically it's going to give me a little bit of a tip here. So if we have a string, like for example, this one up here, which in our case is going to be the value, then we can go in, convert the string into a set to remove characters. Well, that's not really what I was looking for. How if there are 4 unique characters? Well, okay, so I didn't really understand what I was asking for. Again, this is a good example of why I need to know what you're asking it. Let's try and prompt it again, but in like a different way. So I'm gonna say, is there a function to check if, let's say, plus, minus, multiply, or divide exists inside a string, and if any of them exists, return true. just to like, to help it prompt it the right way, I guess. So we're going to say search. Sometimes, by the way, depending on how many people uses ChatGPT, like it might mess things up. Like it might take a long time. So use a regular expression, for example, just like we did below here, by the way. So we can use that, you know, to check for it. So basically, to test for any of these 4 operators. Okay, well, let's actually try and paste that in. So we're going to say inside here. So if, and then we just paste this in, and we say we want to grab value. So we're basically checking for these 4. Good, removing that. Again, you kind of have to like customize what it's giving you to fit with what we're doing here. So you can't just like copy paste exactly. Like you have to, I mean, you could if you just gave it all your code and say, fix all my errors. It's gonna work, but we're not doing that because this is about us learning how to fix errors, right? Learning some new functions inside JavaScript, which is a language I haven't used for the longest time. Yeah, so basically this is going to check whether or not a certain value exists inside this. The test function here returns a Boolean value that indicates whether or not a pattern exists in a search string. So this is an actual function that exists inside JavaScript called test, which I didn't know. Like this kind of seems like I don't know, like a test function we would create together. That's kind of fun to see. So basically, if this particular, like these things, characters exist inside this value here, then we want to return. Basically, like that's what we're doing here. So this is like the best way, I guess, to, or not the best, but like a simple way to do this. So basically, we don't want to add any sort of values, unless it's an actual number that we allow. So let's test this going inside the browser and see if ChatGPT actually gave us something that is functional. So if I go in and do a hard refresh, because we didn't fix the clear button yet, and I say plus, it's not adding it, but I say 2, it is adding it. Oh, but now it breaks for the second time. So we need to fix that. So we cannot, do this afterwards. So a couple of different ways we could do this is basically, we could take, we create a second function to like add operators and want to, add strings, so to speak. Like that's a way to do it, but we're not going to do it that way, because that's more code. It just like gets more messy. Let's actually, just for fun, let's just like do this more simply. So let's just like it did up there, use the if statement and simply say that we want to return, whoops, like so. Again, this is the same code, but it looks cleaner. So we can learn a little bit about how to clean up our code a little bit. So what I'm going to do here is I want to make sure that if this returns, I do want to after typing in a value, I do want to allow this one as long as we have an actual value. So what I could do is I can do kind of like the same thing it did up here. So it's checking for used equals, but we can also check for used operator and set this one equal to false. And then we can basically, if we're using one of these, again, we should probably like go back again, because I know people are gonna want to see this if they're not completely used to this sort of way of like layout code. We could basically just go in and say, well, paste this in again. I just gotta like keep up here with what I'm undoing. So basically we're checking if this value here, or the operator, is being used. But we also need to check if used upper is equal to false. Then we want to return, right? So basically we're doing and I think that's how you do it in JavaScript. There's like in PHP you can also do this, but it's giving me an error message, so you can't do that. So we're checking if used operator is also equal to false. And if it is, then return. But, and then we want to say else if, and then we can go in and say that if this is the case, but actually we don't need that. That's actually, we don't need that. We can actually go in and say if instead just used upper is equal to false, then we go in and just basically do this, but then we also assign used upper to true. Is this it's like when I'm sitting here doing this on the spot, it's like, you know, usually I'm just sitting here, I can do things at my own pace, and I'm like, this like I have like a complete overview of what I'm doing, but I'm also sitting here just kind of like, oh no, I'm doing this live, people are watching me do this. So basically we're saying, so we break out of this if used upper is equal to false, right? So if we have not yet used an operator, then of course we don't want to, actually this is like kind of like misleading, because we're not checking for operator. Let's do use num first. I guess that makes more sense. So if we have not used the first number, then of course we don't want to allow for us to write like this thing here, like the operator signs, right? So this here makes more sense, I guess. So what we can do now is say, well, okay, so can we just do like an else statement? I think that seems like, I guess we can just use an else statement. I don't know why we're doing all of this stuff. Let's just do this instead. There we go, else. Then we're gonna add the value and set used upper equal to true, which is not correct because we changed it. So it's used num first is equal to true, right? So now it makes logically sense. This is why I was looking at this thinking like this doesn't make sense, because we're not checking for the operator, we're checking for the number if it has been used. So doing this, we now basically go in and allow for ourselves to use the number, and we can now use an operator, right? Yes. Now we're gonna run into a second issue, I think. Let's try and save this. So if I go inside the browser now and do a hard refresh, because now I cannot use an operator, but I can use a number, and I still can't use an operator. We need to fix that. Basically, I wanted to check if we could do 1 + 1 and then click plus again, because that should not happen either. Okay, so basically this is actually returning as true, which is why it is not allowing us to use the operator. So that is not what we want to do. So we're checking if these symbols exist, right, inside the value we passed in. And then we also want to make sure that we have not, if we have not used the first number, then of course we don't want to run this either. So this should be correct. So basically the error is going to be down here. So we add the value. This is running. We know that because it's typing in a number. But for some reason, this down here, oh, right. This is what you call an error 40. It happens 40 centimeters away from the screen. We have to assign it equal to true. We're not, like here we were checking if it was true. So now we go in, it should be working. Let's do a hard refresh. So now, cannot click an operator, say 2, that's fine. Plus, it's working, 2. But now we can write plus again. And that is an issue that we should not be allowed to do. So it's going to give us an error, right? So we go in, we say 2 + 2 is working. Let's do a hard refresh. So what I need to do now is basically as soon as I actually allow for an operator to be typed in, is to prevent it from happening again, so to speak. So what we could do, and I'm not like, this is like probably a more optimal way of doing this, but we could also check if an operator has been used. So basically, we go in and we say used upper is equal to false. Again, which it's kind of like laying out all the data that we need to like get this working, right? So have we used the operator yet? No, we have not. Okay. So if I go down here and basically we can run another if statement and check if this particular thing is an operator, right? Just like before. If we have a operator, did I forget a last equal sign here? Good. Again, check for those sort of things. A lot of people, they get error messages and they're like, oh, your code is not working, Daniel. I think your code is outdated. But it's because they made like a spelling error, or like mistype something like this, and then it's not working for them. So always check for symbols, check for spelling errors. That's really important here. So basically, now what I can do is if we do have this particular thing here, right? And again, there is like a better way to do this, which is just like to check it immediately, like at the very beginning, and just returning a true statement and doing that inside here. Should I do that? Let's do that. It's more optimal, I guess. So at the very beginning here, okay, we're basically checking, have we used a equal sign? That's that's the first error we're checking for. Now we start checking for operators, right? So I'm going to create a let variable type, and I will say upper exists. So basically we're checking if an operator exists, and we're setting it equal to this particular value here. So we basically run this because it's going to return true or false, right? So we instead then grab this and just basically use that instead. Like that's cleaner, right? We only check it once. We don't need to check it multiple times. So now we just basically get the value. We have the data. Now we can start using that data. This is the better way to do things. It looks cleaner and I don't feel as bad about it. So basically inside the else statement, we check, is the operator actually existing? Well, okay. Then we just simply go in and say we want to take used operator and set it equal to true because it has been used. And we do also need to make sure that we don't just check if it's equal to true. Like we do also need to we need to break out of this, right? So if upper exists is equal to true, basically checking if we're pasting in an operator, and used upper is equal to false. No, true, no, false. So trying to like, again, like this is like the non-clean way to do things. This is like the best way to do it, right? It looks a little bit cleaner. Instead of like doing all these checking if they're equal to false, just do this instead. It's much cleaner. So yeah, so basically what I did here, right? We go in and check if this is an operator being passed into this function here. If an operator has not yet been used, then go ahead and say that we have now used an operator. Because in the future then, it will then, well, this is not working just entirely yet. Basically, we don't want it to like paste in. So we need to run an else statement. Else, do this, which is actually not true. Gotta think for a second here. Yeah, so basically we're checking, and if an operator has been used the first time, then we still want to add the display value. But I don't want to do like redundant code. Like I can very easily fix this just by simply saying this, and then we just basically do this. You know, like this is... Like this would fix it, but now we're using this line of code twice, and I don't like the idea of that. Like, let's actually test if this is working, because I might just be saying stuff now. So basically, we cannot click one of these. I can click a number, and if I click plus, it's still adding them. It should not. Yeah, so it's not working yet, which we need to fix. Gotta think. So, like, the value here is set equal to true, right? So it shouldn't... Well, it is still adding the value. So it is working like I wrote it here. It's just like, it's still adding the value even if the operator is being used. So this is actually going to be an else if. And we're checking if used upper is equal to true. Yeah, this is not. I'm just like doing like blocks of code here that basically just all will return true. So this is not really optimal. So basically, take this from the start. We have an operator that exists, right? So we say and we then also have used upper is equal to false. So we have not yet used an operator. So if that's the case, and it's the first time we run an operator, we go in here and we want to say that, well, now we have used an operator and we want to add the value. Good. So that's fine. So the second thing we now need to do is... I don't want to be nesting stuff. Like, that's also one of the issues here, because we could fix this by nesting. But it's kind of like the same thing I wanted to do down here, right? So this code is not going to run if upper is equal to true. So the first time, like, this is not going to get run the second time we press the operator. But it's still just going to go down here and... you know, just run this. So what I basically want to do here is I want to check if used upper is actually, well, we could just do this, just go down here and say if used upper is equal to true and an operator exists, then just break out of this, right? Like that's, we could just say return and then run the code down here. Like this right here should be working because used upper, we only check this particular block of like this condition here if an operator has been pressed, but we have already used an operator, right? This right here should work. So going inside the browser here, doing a hard refresh, we cannot press the operators. I can click 2, click plus. Oh, it adds it twice. We need to fix that. But now I can't use it again. But it does add it twice. So we do need to do that. Yeah, we basically need to return here because we don't want to run the second stuff down there. So now, checking it again, hard refresh, 2 plus 2, but we can't use it again. Good. What about if I do it multiple times? Cannot do that. Plus 2 equal. Good. That code is working now. I'm not sure, like there's most likely a more optimal way to do things, right? But now basically this is working like we want it to. And we have to try and keep functions doing things that, like doing one particular task. So this one is just responsible for adding values. So essentially we could split this up into multiple functions so we can reuse functions and stuff like that, but let's just do this for now. So basically, I still hate that I'm using this line of code multiple times, but it's fine. It's working. So let's move on from here down to the next one. So this one clears the entire calculator when we press on the reset button. Of course, it should not do that. So what we're gonna do is instead of running the remove feature, which is just complete utter chaos, let's set display value equal to something else. Basically, essentially what we're doing here is we're not going to use the calc variable at the very top there. We're just going to go ahead and set this equal to an empty string, because it's using all of this as a string, right? When we pass the data into the input, it gets seen as a string. It's not until we actually go inside the calculate button that it goes in and converts these to floats. So that means that we can go inside the click calculator, because it gets pressed before we click calculate, and basically just like convert it into an empty string. Like we can just do that. So let's try this. Actually, we need to do something else too, because when we clear, we have to reset some of these values up here. So I'm just going to copy these that I used inside the first function and clear them. So we're not going to say let, we're going to say just used, and they're going to be equal to false. Because otherwise, when we clear the calculator, we're not resetting things properly. Getting myself some coffee there. Had to cut out my coughing, little coughing session. So if I go back inside the calculator now, and I do a hard refresh, and I type something in, click clear, it clears it, and we can now calculate again, right? We should, when I click equal, still be able to clear it, which is good. Right, so everything, I believe, is still working like intended. Yeah, it is. So the clear button is working. That was very easy to fix compared to the previous one up here. I mean, it wasn't hard, but it's like I'm sitting here with two things in my mind when I'm doing this code, right? I want to, first of all, fix it. And that's usually my process. I fix things first, then I clean up the code afterwards to like simplify things. But this is fine. Like we can just, it's fine. I'm not proud of it, but it's fine. So that is working now. So let's go down and see what this thing does. So basically, my particular calculator here, because we need to talk about this for a second too, my particular calculator here, when I go in and use it, is not allowing to do multiple ones, right? So I can't say 2 + 2 × 3. Like I'm not allowing that inside this particular calculator here with the code that I did inside the first one. We could rewrite it to allow for it. Like that would be fine. So we don't have to worry about in this example here, it adding things in the correct order. So like 2 + 2 × 3. Like, I don't know how many people watching this who cared about math in school, but basically 3 × 2 comes first, because multiply comes before plus and minus. So even though you say 2 + 2 × 3 and the plus is first in order, that's not what is being calculated first. It's always 3 × 2 first, and then you add 2. This is one of those like very fun things you always see on Facebook, you know, when people, they add a very simple like calculation like this, like a math problem, and everyone is gonna be like, oh, well, it's equal to so 8. Like people will say, oh, 12, they'll say, because to say 2 + 2 × 3, right? That took way too long for me to calculate. So it's always fun to see like people getting like falling into that trap there. But we don't have to worry about that in my calculator here. So going inside the calculate feature, are there any other sort of things that could potentially go wrong here? I mean, I'm not really experiencing anything that might break. Like if I'm like using the calculator here, like oh, actually, this should actually, there is one thing we need to fix here, because I click plus, but if I then click times, it should change it. But because we have used an operator already, it's ignoring the input. So that needs to be fixed. Also, we should, well, actually that might be fine. Like it actually giving an error message if you do this and you don't have another number, like that should probably give an error message. Yeah, I think that's fine. Yeah, so we need to return back to the first one up here. I didn't think this one was going to be like the one we're going to work the most on. I thought we were going to like spend a lot of time down here, but we're going to spend time up here. I think the bottom one is more for like if I wanted to have multiple things after each other, it's going to be an issue, because I really don't like how it did this. Like, had this been me, I would just like delete all of this and do it in a different way. But I have been recording for over an hour now. So let's go ahead and fix the fact that we cannot use another operator. So because that we need to be able to do. So what I'll do is I'll go in and say, well, okay, so if there is an operator that is being pressed and an operator has already been used, then I need to go in and check whether or not it is the same operator. So we do need to go in here and run an if condition and basically check, is the operator that exists, well, this returns as a, we need to take the value. That's what we need to take. Oh, well, this is so basically we need to take the already used operator, right? And there's a couple of different ways we can do this. We could do this where we basically, again, run this line of code to check what particularly, like we have to check for which particular operator is being used. Not with this one, but like a different function. Or we could store the operator that was used. I think that might be like the simplest way to do things. Again, we're starting to get like a lot of data, but I've always just kind of like preferred like seeing the data, because one of the things that you can then do later on is if I decide to have another feature built into this calculator here where I need to know which operator has been used, then instead of having to like do this again, you know, something similar to check for which operator exists inside my my input, I have it stored. I have it ready to be used. So like that's just kind of like how I prefer doing things. So let's go ahead and create another one. Used upper. I mean, that's the one we use on this click here, right? Oh, if we have used it. Let's say current upper. So the current operator that is being used or has been used. How do we properly phrase that? Because you also have to make code like readable for other people. Current operator is a little bit misleading because that might be like the current operator that were typed. So like the current one we clicked on, which is the value down there. We could say stored upper. I don't know if that's too technical. Has already used upper. It might be a little bit better. Let's just go ahead and say, let's just say stored upper. I mean, that's the best thing. Maybe you guys have some suggestions to what you could call this, but I'm just gonna go ahead and call it this. And I'm just gonna leave it to a empty string. Because right now we have no stored operator, right? One thing that I see some people do is they just kind of like do this, which you can do. Basically just creating a empty variable, so to speak. But it's always a habit people should have to assign it equal to the empty data type that you want to use. So both for readability, but also just because I guess it's going to throw some errors if, like, for example, I want this to be an array, like so. Then it's going to throw an error if I try to insert, I don't know, an object type or something. I don't know. So set it equal to nothing so far. So what I'll do is I'll take stored operator. Should I just call it already used? It's so long though, already used. Yeah, we'll do this, even though people are going to be upset about it, because like variables should not have long names. They should be descriptive though. You should always, I guess, prioritize descriptiveness over how long they are. So already used upper is equal to an empty string. So what I can do is, if I've gone down and said, okay, so the operator exists inside this particular thing. So we do have an operator, right, that gets passed in. And we have not yet used an operator. So therefore, we're going to say we have used an operator, and we're also going to assign it to this particular thing. So we're going to take value and assign to our already used operator. So now that's stored which one we used. So what we can do now is go down inside this if condition here and say, well, okay, if we already if we have an operator that gets passed in and we already did use an operator previously, then before we just return out of this function here, we can check if the value is equal to the same operator that we already used previously. So is it equal to value? If it is, then return. Okay, so we do that. Then I go below here because, you know, we don't want it to change. We don't want to add a second plus symbol, so to speak. Run into another issue now, I'm realizing. Okay, well, let's take things step at a time. So basically, if it is different, then I want to go in and add this value. But this is gonna cause an issue, right? Because now I'll show it here. I'll demonstrate it because it's gonna be so annoying. So we can't click them, right? I can click plus and I can say plus. If I click plus again, it's not gonna do it. But if I click minus, it's gonna add it next to it. It's not replacing it, it's just adding it. So we need to make sure it replaces it. So how do we do that? We could essentially go in and say that we want to take the value inside display.value and delete the last character. I mean, that is like the simple way to do it. So what we can do again is we can call upon ChatGPT, because I don't know that particular function. So let's say, how can I delete the last value, or the last character, I should say, inside a string? I hate that it doesn't click enter. So how can I delete the last character inside a string? So slice, right? I did an entire tutorial on this, by the way, in my JavaScript course. So basically, we want to slice it. I'm just gonna copy what it gave me here. So basically, we'll go inside and we want to say, not the string, but in this case here, we want to, let's actually just display.value is what we're going to paste in here. So we're grabbing the value from the input and we want to slice it. So basically we say that we want to take the string, like the first, like, because I'm guessing this can be used as an array as well. Basically we're going in, we're taking the string, and then we say -1 character. So we're slicing it from like the last one. Is that what we're doing? Or are we grabbing, like after we slice it, are we then saying, because it gets split into an array, so we have the value and then we have the last character at the end being like the second index inside the array, but we only keep the first one. I guess that's what we're saying. It actually tells it here. Start at index 0, so beginning of the string. Go up to, but not including the last character. Okay, so that's what it's doing. So it returns basically, it returns this without the last character. That's what it's doing. ChatGPT to the help here. Okay. So now we have this, right? And I want to make sure that this is actually a variable. And then we go in And instead of saying we want to set it equal to the value, like plus equal, we're actually going to do like, no, that's not what I wanted to do. Display dot value. So the actual value inside the display is going to become equal. I wanted to concat. Oh, right. I'm thinking PHP right now. There we go. I was thinking like, why does this work? Like not work. Okay, so we take the string, which is everything without the last operator, and then we add the operator, and then we return, right? This should be working. Go in, do hard refresh. You still not click on these, good. 2 plus, cannot click plus, but minus, multiply. And again, because of the way that it set up the calculate function, we can actually do this. Like this is based on the last function, we can do this. Because if it did things slightly different, let's say we actually like just stored the operator, which would actually be like again, I would have done things differently inside the last calculate function. And I guess this is like a C# habit of mine. I guess you can like some JavaScript people love to just like manipulate the code and like search for like certain strings inside strings and like do it that way. But I like to personally just have all the data at the very top here. I would just go in and have a operator variable, and I would change that variable as I was moving on. If I changed it, for example, like by selecting a new variable, and I would just constantly refer to this one up here. That's not how they do it here. Like they do slightly different than I would. But divide, and then we can say 2, which is going to be equal to 1, right? But we, oh, okay, so stuff are still breaking. So if I say 2 plus, it's only checking for the last one. But if I then click 2, I can then replace the number, which should not happen. Okay. So basically, we are going in and we're checking if we have used an operator. Why is it... okay, so basically, I'm doing something slightly wrong in here. So it should not allow for me to, like in any sort of way, use an operator if I have already used it. So I need to check these one at a time. So if operator exists, right? So if we were using an operator inside the value and the operator has not yet been used inside this calculation here, else if the operator has been used inside when we click and it has already been used, then return out of it if the operator is like the same value as previously. So that's fine. No, I shouldn't be using an else statement. Like that's the whole reason we're doing this. So we're not nesting things. So basically, or nesting things, just like writing redundant code, so to speak. Unnecessary code. It's not redundant, but it's unnecessary. For people who don't know what redundant means, because you might be hearing that a lot inside programming, and when English is not my native language, as you can probably hear. Redundant basically means that it is, like, it's just like duplicate. Like there's no need for it, because there's already code doing the same thing. But creating an else statement is not the same thing as doing what we're doing here. So it's not redundant, it's just unnecessary. We can do a console log to see what is going on. Like that's actually a good tool that I have not yet used, which I should be using. This one gets run if the value is the same. That's fine. This should not do anything. But what it will do is still run this code down here. Actually, it's not. So no, it's not, because it's returning, right? We're breaking out of this function here. We grab this string. This one is not going to do anything. This is basically like this is not causing any errors. This one, though, is the one causing errors. So if we have used it, it should not do this. Like the whole reason we did this was to prevent this from happening. Yeah, so there's definitely something going wrong here with our code. Display.value is going to be equal to the string plus the new value, but we're stripping away the number instead. So basically, this one is running. Okay, there's some logic here we need to we need to figure out. So when I go inside the calculator, right? Let's clear it. When I click plus, 2, plus, cannot do it again. I can change it, but I cannot press it again. Oh, I can't press plus again either. Oh, right, okay. Oh, okay. There might be something here. So yeah, we need to replace already used upper, of course, after doing this. So basically, when we get to this point here, we need to make sure, let's do it after this one, that already used upper is being replaced. So it's going to be equal to the new value. Duh. Okay. Let's see how that changes things, because it's still going to be plus. Like inside the code, it's still going to be plus. So we refresh, 2 plus. Got. So now it's being replaced. Now it's 2 again. 2. Okay, so I'm noticing something here. When I say 2 plus 2, if I press plus again, it's not doing anything. But if I press any of the other ones, it changes it. So we need to make sure that when we go inside this code down below here, that it does not change it if we do not have an operator. So if this one, upper exists, it should only be doing this code down here. Actually, let's do an if statement. If this one here is false, then it should just like break out of this, I guess. Because we don't want it to do this. We don't want it to run this code here if it is an operator. Because we don't want to replace the number, right? So if we do this, go back inside, refresh. Let's do a hard refresh. Can't press these. 2, good. Plus, we could change it. Good. Plus, oh, it's still replacing them though. Well, of course this is not gonna work. Like, it's not even gonna run this if this is gonna be true. We basically need to check if the previous value is equal to an operator. Okay. So there's a couple of ways we can do this. Like, this is obviously not going to work. Like, this is, might as well delete that. We could again do a slice like we do down there and then check if the one that we slice away is going to be equal to one of those operators. So how are we going to do that? Is there like, if we can use ChatGPT again to see if we can actually just, is there a way to check what the sliced character, oh, misspelled, what the sliced character was? Yes, you can get the last character before slicing. So basically, we can also just like grab the character and just like store what it was. Yeah, okay. So there's a function here. We're going to use that one to like solve this. Basically, this goes in and actually like grabs the last character to check what it was based on how long the string of character is. So before we slice anything, well, actually we can do it after. It doesn't really matter. We're going to check what the last character is by taking the string, which in this case is going to be the value. So we take the display.value. There we go. And then we check character at the string's length. Let's scroll forward here. -1. So basically it's returning a number on how many characters exist inside the string here. This is the same thing again when you use arrays, then you check like numbers inside arrays, like the index number. But in this case here, we're checking for a string length. So we get the full length. So if I just did this, we would just check like basically the full length of the string. But I want to say -1 to go back one character at the very end and check what that particular character is. So by doing that, we now know what the last character is. So what I can then do is use that for something. For example, say that by going down here, so we have the last character. If that particular character does not equal this up here, I guess. This is so dumb. Okay. I mean, we're basically like running, we should probably, I guess, should I just run an if statement here? We could, I guess. Let's do an if statement. This is going to be a little bit lengthy, okay? But we're going to do an if statement just to check this. So instead of doing this, we're just going to go ahead and go above here. Let's just do everything beforehand. We're going to write an if condition, and we're going to check for, again, this particular value here. But I want to check for the last one. So we're going to take this that the ChatGPT gave us, and we're going to use that instead of value, okay? So we're basically grabbing the last letter or the last character, and we're checking if that one is equal to any of these characters here. But in this case here, I want to check if this one is not going to be equal to any of those characters. So basically, I don't know if we can do this. I don't think we can. Maybe we can. But I want to check if this one is equal to false, right? We could probably do that. I don't know. So if it's equal to false, then I want to basically return and break out of this thing. What did we do down here? Did we need to have this? Yeah, because we're changing the last one. Okay. Let's try this. See if this works. Go in, refresh. Can't click these. Good. 2. We can click multiple times. That's good. Plus, cannot click multiple times. Oh, but it does not replace it now. Oh, right, of course, because it breaks up before we get a chance to. So basically, I'm running this early. Gotta think here for a second. So it is breaking out. Now it's checking for characters like that has been used last, but it's actually breaking out too early because we don't get a chance to run this down here. So basically slicing, we're removing the last one. So we do need to do this first, but we just need to make sure it's doing it correctly. Okay, so I just realized that the code here is actually redundant. Speaking about redundant, by the way, because we're basically checking here if the last character is already like one of these operators, but we already created a boolean that checked if we have already used an operator. So this is all basically just essentially the same as doing this, which is kind of like dumb. Okay, we're gonna try something a bit different then. Like the logic here, like I'm trying to keep everything inside my brain. It's like always easy to be backseat driver, okay? You're watching this and you're like, oh, this makes perfectly sense, Daniel. So what we're gonna do is basically, I'm going to grab the last character. I think that's essentially a good thing to do. Just kind of store it for now, right? So we're just gonna do this. And before we remove the last character, which we do down here, we slice it out. I'm just going to go and create a variable, call it last character, and set it equal to the last character inside this string. Semicolon at the end here. So once we do this, we're going to grab the last character and we're just going to have it. It's good to have the data, right? And then afterwards, what I want to do essentially is removing or slicing out the last character, but it's only going to do that if we have already used the operator. So that's fine, right? Let's just like test what the calculator is doing again, because I need to see it. So we do plus, right? And then we go in and we cannot click the other ones now. Which is okay. This is fine. So Okay, yeah, we can't change it. So that needs to happen, right? Need to be able to go in and we need to change it without messing up the last character if it's a number. So basically we go in and we say if the value is the same. Now, what is confusing me here is we're not actually changing the value when I press a new one. So basically we're checking if it's the same. If not, then return. But it should actually, with this code down here, it should go in and change the value. Did I not do a hard refresh? Is that why things are not working? So if we do this, do that. Yeah, it's not changing. It should be changing, which is kind of odd. I mean, obviously there's going to be some code here that makes it like that way, but... Oh, right, because it's running this return down here. Actually, no, it's not. It should go in and change this. So if I'm not using the same value, it then goes down and it says display.value is going to be equal to the new value, which is the string here. This shouldn't, like, this code up here should not strip away anything if I remove it. Like, it shouldn't do anything. So if I go back in, do a hard refresh, like, we're basically back where we started now. Okay, so it does do something. Yeah, it's not supposed to do that. So that's something I need to fix. So display.value.characterset, it actually goes in. Wait, it takes string.length. Okay, that's not what it's supposed to do. So we're going to try something a little bit different here, because I kind of reached a point where this is not quite doing what I want it to. Basically, we're going to take it from top to bottom, and we're not going to do any sort of nesting, because nesting is like a bad thing unless you like really need to. And I think I'm noticing that I'm doing unnecessary nesting here. So the first thing we're going to do is we have this value here that exists, that checks if we're pressing one of the operators, right? If we are not pressing an operator, actually if we are, but if we also haven't used an operator yet, we just want to return, that's fine. So we go below here, and I don't want to be nesting, so we're going to remove this else statement, because there's no need for it. And what I'll do is I'll then check if we currently have an operator that has been passed in, and I have not yet used an operator. Is this kind of redundant though? I gotta ask myself, because I'm checking here if I have not used a number yet. So this is kind of redundant, right? So I'm checking if I do have an operator that has been passed in, and I've not used an operator yet. There's literally no reason to do this, because this one will return me out of this function if not. Which I think this is like, I guess, cleaner to do it this way here. So basically we're checking if we do have an operator passed in and we have not used the first number, which is a boolean that we have up here, right? So if we have used, which in this case if we have not, then I go inside and just simply checks if the operator exists. Well, in that case, again, this is so redundant, because now we're checking again down here if the operator exists, and we have already used the operator. So, well, we did have a reason we used that though, for checking later on. So I guess we do need to have it in there, because we're using it to check for something else. But we use this in order to check if whether or not we should allow other operators to be passed in afterwards. So it is redundant, because we're basically creating something here that I'm saying it's not allowed. Like if I do 2 plus 2, I should not be allowed to continue calculating, like adding another 2, another plus, so to speak, or minus or multiply. But we are allowing it inside this thing here. So this one here is kind of like, it's not necessary. So basically I'm saying that we want to check. Can we just remove this? I don't think it's actually needed. We can basically just do this, I'm guessing. So if we have an operator passed in and we have used the first number, then basically I go in and say that, and again, this one's not needed. We then basically go in and say we want to do something specific. So in this case here, we go in and check if already used upper is equal to value. So we're not actually adding something in here because we haven't actually assigned already used upper. But in this case, it's not going to be equal because we have it set to nothing. So it's basically just an empty string. So in this case here, it will actually run this statement the first time at least. And it's going to go in and basically just return, which I don't think it should. So if we pass in an operator, right, it should use it. Is this redundant as well? Did I create a bunch of redundant code in here? I think it's like, okay, so if the operator has been passed in, I first want to check if the value is the same. If it is, okay, then we don't do anything. So this is fine. This is fine. It should not run this the first time. So the second time we go in and we don't think add this value here. We don't do that quite yet. And basically we just go in and say, well, okay, so if the operator exists and it's different, so it's not the same as it already is, then I want to go in and I want to actually change it. Right? I want to reassign the new operator that is being used. So this code here needs to get passed inside this if condition. Let's just do that as the very first thing. So we're replacing the operator we're now using, right? And we are checking, so we're checking if we're using an operator that is one of these. And we're basically just going in and saying that we want to, like, we're checking the last character. That's fine. That's fine. So everything here is fine so far. And then we replace it. Then we go inside the next statement here and say we want to just basically grab all the code except for the operator, which is kind of where I stopped. Like we need to like really make sure here that we're not going in and like doing wrong calculations in a place where it's not necessarily needed. Like you can always see I deleted a bunch of stuff already, which is kind of like redundant code. Let's remove all of these different console logs because they're just kind of like taking up space. So this is what I have so far. We change the operator. Then I go in and I want to say that I want to take the string without the operator and I want to display the value. So why am I doing that? Is what is confusing me. So basically I go in, I check if the last character is an operator, which okay, so we're checking if the last character is an operator, because in that case, is this what I'm doing down here? I think I might be doing something up here that I'm also checking for down there. Yeah, I think I am. I don't think I should be doing this. What should I really be checking for though? When I go in here, we're basically checking if the operator exists. Then we go in and say, is it the same operator? Okay, it is. Then do nothing, right? If it is different, we need to replace the already existing operator and we need to show that new one inside the display, which is why we go inside the display. We need to figure out, or we need to slice away the last one and then replace it with the new value, which in this case here, we could just use already used operator and paste that one in. So basically we say display.value is now going to be equal to the stripped one and the new one, right? So now we were replacing it, and then we return out of this particular one. So we are doing what was, I think really this line of code here is what I was missing previously. So doing that, and then going down, because we're not going to run this code if this is the case. Is this basically fixing it? I think we might actually be having fixed it. Let's try this again. So 2, now I can't even press 2. Why can we not press 2 anymore? So basically we're going into append, right? And if operator exists, like it shouldn't actually, like if I'm pressing a number, this statement should be false. If this statement is false, it's gonna go down, and we need to run this outside the statement, like so. Okay, there we go. This is what happens when you start like doing a bunch of nesting and you then delete it. So basically, now we can type. Can I actually type a plus? We cannot. Okay, so we can't type any of these operators. So I'd say 2 plus. Okay, now it's working. I can replace it. 2. I can still add. Good. Okay, so far so good. It's much more like simplified now of the code that I did. So we're gonna say 2 plus 2 times 4. Now it did something. 2 plus 2. Okay, maybe it just didn't register it. Times 4 is equal to 10. Good. 2 plus 2 times 4. Okay, so maybe it just didn't register the last time because it is working. If I do a hard refresh, it is working again. So 2, let's say minus 2 in this case here, times 4, minus 6. Good, so it is working. If I then do a hard refresh, 2 plus 2 times 4 minus, then we still get 10. Good. So what did I just completely mess up last time? I was doing like a bunch of redundancy. This is much more simplified, and we don't need to use used upper. I don't think I'm using this one. Yeah, we can delete this one. Use num first. Oh, we are using that one. Okay, so this right here is working. The calculator is working. I don't think I'm seeing anything that could potentially go wrong here. I mean, there's one thing I could think of, but honestly, I've been going at this calculator for like a long time now. If I try to divide, for example, by 0, I don't think, like, let's say we say 2 divided by 0, it's going to give me infinity, which I guess, I mean, that is correct. But basically, this is like, this you shouldn't be able to do. So you could also go in and just like do a function or like do an if statement that checks if you divide by 0, because you shouldn't allow to do that. But this is much more simple than what we got to begin with. I did a bunch of nesting. This is what I say about cleaning up afterwards. Sometimes it helps taking a break. I had to like go help with my my puppy, came back to it, and I realized, what is all this redundancy? So basically just went in and basically just changed how things worked. So it's working now, much more simple. That's great. So we have a final result here. Finally, I've been going at this for like way too long, basically because I was doing it too complex at the beginning. And I just kind of realized at the end there that maybe we should like try to simplify it and see if I'm overcomplicating things a little bit. But it is working now, which is good. And what I'll do from here is I'll post the next assignment that I'll do on live here, like, by not seeing the code beforehand on Patreon. And for people who are members who want to check out you know, do this with me. Maybe check out the code that I will do beforehand. Maybe time yourself to see how long it takes you to actually do it, and then I'll, you know, see how long it takes for me to do it. With the same tools available, of course, if you want to use ChatGPT, as long as you don't just feed it the answer and say, oh, solve this for me. But if you need like functions and stuff, it's always a really good tool to use. So I'll have the next assignment on Patreon. You can check it out if you want to. And then I'll see you guys in the next video and we can try to solve it together. So with that said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.